In today's episode, we'll discuss the polarizing attraction that reinvented the technology of musical roller coasters. Welcome to Airtime Traveler. Hey everybody, welcome to the Roller Coaster History Podcast. You are listening to Airtime Traveler. My name is Nathan Grace, and I'm joined by my wife and lovely co-host.
I am Haley Grace.
And thank you for tuning in to episode 6 of the podcast. If you haven't had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 5, be sure to go and check those out. We've done everything from Powder Keg at Silver Dollar City to Dominator at King's Dominion. So if you haven't listened to the podcast before, basically here at Airtime Traveler, we take one roller coaster and we dive into the history of that individual roller coaster. I am a coaster enthusiast and have been for a long time, and my wife Haley is a member of the GP, or the general public, so she's not obsessed and overly nerdy when it comes to the roller coasters like I am. So, but she enjoys them, and I get to share these stories with her, so, and we have a fun time doing it. So, yeah, you have anything you've seen in the world of coasters this week? You told me about that, and you saw that Cedar Point TikTok you saw yesterday on, with you said it was something to do with horseback riding.
Oh yeah, I found out that Cedar Point, does horseback rides, and they're a little traillet that goes through the back of the park or something.
I wonder if it's some kind of tour, like a VIP tour, but it mix it with horseback riding.
I don't know, but there was a couple that they call themselves the Cedar couple. I think that's who they are, and they went on a horse. It has a weight limit. But, anyways, yeah, they got to go on this little horseback ride, and it's for kids or for adults, but anyways, it's kind of neat.
Well, that's cool. I enjoy that. I enjoy when parks have, unique experiences that you can do. We can't afford them, but,
No.
Maybe someday we can do some stuff like that. That'd be cool.
Mm-hmm.
So. Well, I saw this week that, Busch Gardens, actually, I think I saw it, I guess it was probably a couple weeks ago, but we haven't talked about it yet. But Busch Gardens Williamsburg posted something on Twitter where it was a picture of a storm out in the distance, and said a storm is coming to the gardens or something like that. But then in the bottom left corner of the picture, there was a picture of there was a little bit of unfinished coaster track. And so everyone was like, hold on, wait a minute. This is kind of like that SeaWorld post from a couple months ago. And so, which they're owned by the same company, so I guess maybe it's the same marketing strategy. But there's been rumors about 2 different coasters that they're currently in development at the park. So there's one that's an indoor coaster that I guess it'll be a launch coaster, but it'll go around the track 2 times.
That's cool.
So it has a switch track that you go around once, and then as you come back around again, the track switches so that you come back into the station.
So does it launch twice?
I think it probably does. It's probably you come out of the station, and there's probably kind of like how Time Traveler or Skyrocket at Kennywood have a rolling launch. It's probably like that, where you come into the launch, but then as you come through the second time, you'll hit the launch again, and it'll launch you back up at the same speed. Or I don't know, maybe it'll launch you faster the second time. That could be interesting.
That'd be cool.
Where the first time it's kind of slow, or you get some hang time or whatever, and then the second time it's more whippy and fast. I don't know.
Whippy?
That's a term in the industry.
Whippy.
Don't tease me about that. That's a.
I like it.
So, some people also speculate that maybe it'll be pitch black the first time, but then they'll be theming the second time around. So, I don't know. We'll see.
I still can't get over Whippy.
That is a term in the industry, so.
I don't know how. It doesn't sound like it.
Well, it's just when the ride
I know what it means. It's just a funny terminology.
What word would you use instead of that?
whips a lot.
Whips a lot? Whippy? I don't know.
Whippy.
So
Alrighty.
the other coaster they've talked about is like some kind of shuttle coaster that would have like a 300-foot spike at the end of it, but I don't know. We'll see. So, and then what was the other thing I saw? Oh, I also saw something in relation to Cedar Point. So they removed Wicked Twister over.
I actually saw that.
Did you see this?
Yeah.
Did you see what they're putting in place?
I didn't see what they were putting in place, but there was somebody on TikTok like watching them tear it down.
Yeah. So
and it was insane. Like they just basically like used a giant crane and went and all fall down.
So they tore Wicked Twister down. That was back in September, and there's been lots of speculation about what's going to go on the spot. But it was a pretty small coaster, so there wasn't like they couldn't do something huge there. So they announced it this week or I don't know if Cedar Point officially announced it or if someone just found out what it was going to be, but it's going to be a really big restaurant that's going there. So people are kind of bummed about that in the enthusiast industry. They haven't built a new coaster since 2018, so which is pretty odd for Cedar Point to go, because obviously with a new restaurant coming this year.
Now, are they landlocked? Or do you think that they could expand?
I mean, they have developed quite a bit of the land, but they could have put a coaster there. It would have been a small one, but they could have put something there. They're getting to the point where they're probably going to have to start tearing stuff out to put new stuff in, or take the parking lot and turn it into a parking garage to give them more space to work. The problem with that is, one, they'd have to move the entrance to the park, which they just redid, when they built Gatekeeper. So that's unlikely. And two, parking garages are super expensive. So, like, sometimes even more expensive than building a new roller coaster. So, right. I don't know. It's getting to the point that they might have to start tearing out old coasters to put new ones in. Top Thrill Dragster is kind of in a 50-50 whether it's going to open or not again. So if they tear that out, that leaves them a pretty big plot of land that they can put something. So
cool.
So we'll see. So anyway, that's the coaster news for the day. So we'll just jump right into our episode. So I mentioned last time we were going to do something from Orlando, whether it was Disney or Universal. Well, we're going to do something from Universal Studios today. Yeah, so we did something from Disney already, so
I wish we were doing Disney, but we can do Universal. Yeah,
clearly. Haley would do Disney every week if we could, but we'd run out of coasters really fast if we did Disney every time.
I guess so.
So today we're going to be talking about... Oh, one quick thing I forgot to mention. We did record a trip report for our Kings Island trip like we had talked about. Unfortunately, while I was editing the episode, my editing program crashed and I lost all the audio. So that was... Yeah, I was not thrilled about that. So we will eventually re-record that episode or that trip report and get it out to you guys, but it might be a month or two before we get to find the time to get to that. So just keep an eye out for that and follow the podcast so that you're notified every time we post something new. And you can also follow us on social media to keep up to date on things. So, all right. So let's get into it. So today we're going to be talking about Haley's favorite. We're going to be talking about Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit at Universal Studios. See Haley's face right now. Just because you didn't like it doesn't mean it doesn't have a fascinating history. It's not even that I didn't even
like it. I hated it because I blacked out so bad that you had to help me walk off the ride. It was bad. I was so sick.
The ride is interesting because I feel like we had a very mixed experience with the coaster. Because first of all, we got to Universal. We spent 2 days at Universal. We did 1 day at Universal Studios Florida and 1 day at Islands of Adventure. So the first day we were at Universal, we walked into the park and we were like, let's go do the big roller coaster at the front of the park. So we walk over there to go in line, and Haley and I were there, and also my parents, my sister, and a friend of my sister's were there. And my dad is a big, like, he does roller coasters. He's a roller coaster junkie like me. He's not necessarily an enthusiast, but he'll ride anything. And so he gets in line with us, but my dad has a pacemaker, and they had a metal detector. It's probably, I'm trying to remember now. You must not have been able to take your phone on the ride with you. That must have been what the metal detector was for. I can't remember now why they had that, but
it was just.
But because he had a pacemaker, he couldn't go through the metal detector, so he couldn't ride the ride. So that was complaint number one, and that also happened when we went to ride Incredible Hulk the next day. So that was my biggest complaint about Universal was, my dad has like a medical condition that doesn't prevent him from riding the coasters, but it does prevent him from going through the metal detectors. So there's got to be, because I know we talked to Cedar Point, because we're going to be going there later this year.
And they're really accommodating.
Mm-hmm. They had a pass that he can get that allows him to not have to go through the metal detector when we go on Steel Vengeance. So if Universal and granted, it has been a while since we went to Universal, so maybe they've changed that policy since then, but that was a bummer that, he couldn't ride essentially the two biggest coasters that they had at the time that we went. So. So that was the first strike, and then actually riding the ride, I loved it and Haley hated it. So, which is funny because as we'll get into, this coaster is pretty polarizing. So our experience kind of mirrors the way that other people feel about the ride too. People either hate it or they love it. So, and I would be curious, and I don't know if you'll ever ride it again, but I would. Well, I was going to say, I feel like your vertigo was a lot worse back then than it is now. You wouldn't even try it?
Nope.
That's so funny. So, anyway, that's the coaster we're talking about today.
Nope.
So. Haley just got super dizzy. I think it was the brake runs that really did it for you.
It was the brake runs, because I remember, I think it was either the second or third brake run that I remember, it coming into the brake so quick that, I remember, literally, blacking out for the rest of the ride. And then, we got off the ride, and I could barely stand. I was, kept blacking in and out, trying to walk, and, yeah. Yeah,
we, if I remember correctly, we went in that little, because they have a spot to do concerts, right out front there.
Yeah.
And there's, a big field there in front of the stage, and I think we just had you go lay down in the grass for half an hour to just kind of gather your bearings again before we went.
And I don't think I got on much anything else after that, because
did you go on Incredible Hulk? I don't think so. Yeah, I think you were worried the same thing would happen, that because that one went upside down so many times.
Yeah, there was very little I wrote on.
You did escape from Gringotts. Mm-hmm. I remember that, and we did Flight of the Hippogriff too, which that was just a family roller coaster. I don't even know if you remember that one, but at that point, Hagrid's was under construction, so we didn't do that one, and obviously Velocicoaster wasn't there because that one's brand new. So, and for some reason, I don't remember why we didn't do Revenge of the Mummy. I don't know if it was under refurbishment or something, but this trip that we took was before I was an enthusiast, so I really don't remember why we didn't go on that. I feel like we would have if it was open, so I don't know why, but we didn't go on that either. So I'm just looking at the list of coasters here. Pteranodon Flyers we tried to go on, but it was closed, and we just never got back around to it. So then Incredible Hulk I went on. Rip Ride Rockit we went on. Gringotts, Flight of the Hippogriff, and then they just have a kiddies coaster, so that checks out. So I'd love to go back to Universal now that their top two coasters now are coasters that have been built since we went there, at least according to the Coaster Bot ranking. So
yeah, it'd be fun to maybe go back and ride those too. But
it's tough because typically when we're going to Orlando, we're going to Disney.
Yeah.
And in that same area, you've got Universal and SeaWorld, and like an hour and a half away is Tampa, Busch Gardens. So there's so much I wanted. Well, and then there's the Fun Spot parks in Kissimmee and Orlando. So there's so many coasters I want to ride there, but there's just not enough time. So
okay, well, I'll go to Disney for a week, and then
maybe that's what we'll have to do. We'll have to plan sometime in the next few years. We'll plan a trip where you go to Disney for a week, and I'll go park hop all the other things for a week.
Fine by me. I would totally be fine with that.
So we'll figure it out. All right. So, like I said, Rip Ride Rockit is a polarizing coaster. It is a massive hit among the general public for the most part. Present company excluded.
Yeah.
But coaster enthusiasts tend to argue about the coaster quite a bit.
That's funny that it's opposite.
Mm-hmm.
That general public likes it because I don't know.
Yeah, we'll get into it. I even pulled up some tweets from some enthusiasts just to kind of show you the kind of arguments that are happening about the ride and the kind of different feelings. So, opened in 2009, got no love whatsoever from the Golden Ticket Awards. No rankings.
Serves them right.
Haley's just gonna dump on this coaster.
I'm gonna just be bitter the
she's
entire
gonna trash
episode.
on this coaster the whole time.
That's okay. I've been fairly fair the majority of episodes, so I'm allowed.
I think the only other coaster we've talked about that you didn't like was Wildcat, which even
that one I was like, okay, that was alright, but like this one I'm like,
Haley doesn't keep track of her credits and rankings like I do, but if she did, this one would definitely be at the bottom of the list.
The very, very bottom. So. Even below the bottom.
In the Coaster Bot rankings, it currently ranks number 126 in the country. Puts it below coasters such as Wildfire at Silver Dollar City, Hang Time at Knott's Berry Farm, and Rock and Roller Coaster at Disney World. Puts it ahead of coasters such as Incredicoaster at California Adventure, Hydra at Dorney Park, and Rougarou at Cedar Point. At Universal, it ranks 5th. So Velocicoaster is ranked number 3. Hagrid's Motorbike Adventure at 38. Incredible Hulk at 50. Then Revenge of the Mummy is 85. So then, like I said, Rip Ride Rockit, 126. And then following is Escape from Gringotts, Flight of the Hippogriff, Pteranodon Flyers, and Woody Woodpecker's Nuthouse Coaster. So those are your Universal Studios rankings. That includes both parks. And they are building a third park, too, which that's a fair point that maybe we hold off going to Universal until they open that third park. That would be when we...
The Mario?
Well, so it's called Universal Epic Universe is the name of the park, and the Nintendo World is part of that park, but I think there's definitely some other stuff coming too.
I think that would be fun.
So it would be very fun. So
we like Mario and like that whole kind of theming. I'm
excited.
So.
They're opening a Nintendo World at Universal Hollywood as well. That one's opening first, so I'll be curious to see what kind of stuff they put in there. I haven't seen anything about any roller coasters coming to Epic Universe, at least not in Florida. I know they're opening Nintendo World in Universal Studios Japan, I think. It's either Japan or they may have a Shanghai park. I don't know. But there's like a Donkey Kong themed roller coaster going in over there.
That would be fun.
Yeah, so hopefully they can do something like that in Florida too. All right, so let's talk about the history behind Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit. So let's go back to 1977. All right, 1977. So not as far back as we've gone the past couple episodes. We went back to 1800s last time.
That's true.
So our story is actually starting at Disneyland today, which is opposite from, the Universal parks, what we thought we would start at. But basically today I want to talk about the history of onboard sound in roller coasters, because Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit kind of, maybe not so much onboard sound, but Rip Ride Rockit kind of symbolizes the peak of musical roller coasters. Which there's not a ton of them, but there are a couple that we're going to talk about today that are kind of interesting. So in Disneyland, after the success of Magic Kingdom's Space Mountain in 1975, Disney wanted to put Space Mountain over in Disneyland as well. So in 1977, they built Space Mountain. Opens to the public on May 27th of that year. I don't know if you know this. You probably do. That the Space Mountain at Disneyland is completely different from the one in Disney World.
Yeah,
so
it's completely different.
Yeah, like the outside looks similar, but the actual ride experience is completely different.
You know, the cars themselves and like the whole track inside is different. Yeah.
Yep. So same concept, completely different ride. So, attraction has been obviously has been extremely successful over the years. As has every version of Space Mountain. You know, whatever park they put it in, it's a headline attraction. Operated as normal for about 20 years, and then in the mid-90s, they decided to kind of overhaul and refurb the ride. And when they did that, they added onboard sound. And I couldn't find for sure if this was definitely one of the first times onboard sound was on a coaster, if not the very first time onboard sound was on a roller coaster. So there had been coasters where there's like speakers like around the ride or like next to the track, but this was the first instance I could find where it was in the train with you. So they reopened in 1996. The rock and roll soundtrack was recorded by Dick Dale, the king of the surf guitar.
Alrighty.
I don't know. That was in the article I read. I was like, okay, I don't know. Apparently he was a big inspiration for the Beach Boys, and
interesting.
There you go.
I guess we have to listen to
the king of the surf guitar.
King of the surf guitar.
So, and the music was synchronized with every twist and turn. Now, I found this quote that was really bizarre from this newspaper I read from 96.
You find the most bizarre
when I'm looking at newspaper clippings, I find the weirdest stuff, which I love to put in here because it adds, some more fun stuff to talk about. But, so I guess that this was Orlando newspaper. They were there for the reopening of Space Mountain, and they were covering all the opening, and they were like interviewing people that were there for the ride reopening, and they interviewed this lady named Angela from San Francisco, and this is her quote. She says, "It gives new meaning to the phrase, 'In space, no one can hear you scream.'"
Oh dear.
I was like, oh my gosh.
Do you have experience?
I was like, this is a Disney attraction. Like that's a pretty intense quote for a Disney attraction, but
she just obviously didn't put the two and two together.
I guess
it's really morbid, man.
It is quite morbid. So
I'm still wondering, does she have experience of screaming in space?
I don't know. But yeah, that was anyway, I thought not only did she say that, but I found it interesting. The newspaper's like, yeah, put that in there. That's a good quote.
That's juicy. That's juicy material right there.
So, the technology to pull this off, the onboard stereo, was relatively new, and despite the speakers being directly behind guests' heads, many guests said the music was difficult to hear over the sound of the coaster and people screaming. So, but despite that, Disney would continue to become a pioneer in the implementation of onboard sound and roller coasters, because just a few years later, they opened Rock and Roller Coaster in 1999, which this isn't just about onboard sound. Onboard sound is literally the experience of this coaster, right?
So fun.
So this steel coaster was a much more thrilling experience, but since it was themed to the rock band Aerosmith, the trains were equipped with onboard speakers that would blast classic Aerosmith songs as the trains traversed the track. The ride was a smash hit and continues to draw in large crowds to this day, although it's, it's hard to say Rock and Roller Coaster is a headliner at that park now because of Tower of Terror, Rise of the Resistance, Slinky Dog Dash, Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railroad. That park is just stacked now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, they've added so much to Hollywood Studios.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like ever since they tore down, like, the iconic, like, hat, they're just like, okay, how much can we add to this park to make it...
Disney definitely has a pattern of focusing on one park at a time.
Because right now it's Epcot.
Right now it's Epcot, and maybe a little bit Magic Kingdom, but clearly Epcot is the focus of their attention right now. So.
Right, which I hope in the future that they add more to Animal Kingdom, because I feel like there's so much that they could do with that park. and people kind of were like, yeah, Animal Kingdom's cool, but you know, at the same time,
Typically, when we go, we spend 2 days at each park except for Animal Kingdom. We usually spend a day.
Yeah.
So, I think it probably will happen. I think once the Epcot refurb is done, because then they will have a new roller coaster at Magic Kingdom. They will have all the new stuff at Hollywood Studios. They have just refurbed Epcot. It just makes sense that the next step would be, okay, what can we add to Animal Kingdom?
Right.
So, and maybe with the new Avatar movie, maybe they expand Pandora. I don't know.
Please.
Give me a Pandora roller coaster.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh, I would love that.
That would be so cool. That would be so cool.
Yeah, that'd be exciting. So.
Oh my gosh, I would just die and be so happy. I am a huge Avatar World of Pandora junkie. Like, I love that movie so much.
It's your favorite movie series. So.
Yeah, one of them, yeah. So it's not a series yet. So we're waiting on the second one.
It's almost a series.
Almost December.
Yep.
So, but yeah. So I love that movie. Love anyways. So I don't know. They do a really great job with the one Flight of Passage ride.
Flight of Passage is really good.
And so like it kind of gives you kind of a little bit of a thrill, but like.
And
I feel
that's
like a roller coaster. Really
well,
cool.
and the thing is clearly Disney prefers their dark rides over their roller coasters.
Right.
And just comparing Disney to Universal, that seems to be one of the big differences. Like when you go to Disney, the only roller coaster that you can see from the path, well, Expedition Everest, I guess, but that one's kind of like a mix between an indoor coaster and outdoor coaster. But then Slinky Dog Dash is really the only one that's completely outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
Rock and Roller Coaster, Space Mountain. Big Thunder is outdoors, but you really can't see the coaster until you get up into the line. Seven Dwarfs you can see from the path, but again, very heavily themed. A lot of it is indoors. Whereas Universal, you've got Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit, you've got Incredible Hulk, Velocicoaster, which are all extremely visible from the path.
Right.
Just differences in how, the parks are run. And if you asked a coaster enthusiast which park they prefer, guarantee more people are going to say Universal.
We'll say Universal.
So, especially because of Velocicoaster, like that one is put Universal in a really good spot as far as enthusiasts are concerned.
I'm hoping Tron will give him a run for the money.
Tron's going to be a good addition, and Cosmic Rewind was a good addition as well.
Yes.
I've heard a lot of enthusiasts say Cosmic Rewind completely blew their expectations away. Because a lot of people are like, it's just going to be it's going to be a family coaster, but a lot of people are like, wow, that was really impressive. So I would not be surprised to see Cosmic Rewind hit the top 50 in the Coaster Bot rankings when they come out later this year. And Tron possibly could also hit top 50. So, but I don't see either of them hitting top 5 like Velocicoaster is. So, anyways,
Rip Ride Rockit. We're getting way off topic.
Well, it's interesting to talk about, these differences between Disney and Universal. And it comes into play, just because Disney starts this process of onboard sound, which then convinces Universal to do stuff, which then convinces Disney to do better stuff. And, the two kind of play off of each other.
Oh, they compete all the time.
Yeah. So Disney continues to develop this technology with onboard sound. So California Screamin' featured onboard audio in 2001. A second rock and roller coaster opens in Disneyland Paris in 2002. Space Mountain in Disneyland gets another refurb from 2003 to 2005 where they upgraded the speakers. So, because people couldn't really hear it that well back when they first did it.
Right.
So they put in a new speaker system and now it's a lot better. And then they also updated the speakers in Rock and Roller Coaster in 2007. So continually updating the rides, and they're trying new things as well. So as Disney is continuing to develop this technology with their coasters, others in the industry are starting to take notice. So particularly there's some investors in South Carolina that want to develop a whole theme park around this idea. And then Universal Studios is starting to develop a coaster with this idea in Japan. So we're going to talk about both of those. I'm going to try not to jump around too much so it doesn't get too complicated. So let's start in South Carolina. So in the early 2000s, there's a company in Myrtle Beach that wanted to work with Hard Rock Cafe to bring the classic rock theme to an entire theme park. The plans had been circulating for a few years, but nothing official had been signed. Finally, in 2006, they signed a licensing deal with Hard Rock Cafe for $2.5 million per year, which that's a crazy amount of money just for a licensing deal.
Yeah.
But it also included a $385 million loan to build the park. So they had all this money to let's go build the park, and then we'll pay this licensing fee to keep Hard Rock at the forefront of the park. So the amusement park was named Hard Rock Park and was constructed during 2007 and opened to the public on June 2nd, 2008.
Is it still there?
No. So
I was going to say, I've never even heard of this place before.
So this, we keep talking about amusement parks that aren't there anymore. We talked about Jaga Lake last time, and talked about Hard Rock Park today. So we'll get to talk about the whole story of Hard Rock Park today. So the Eagles and the Moody Blues performed a concert for the grand opening. The park featured 3 coasters with onboard sound when it opened. So the first one was Eagles Life in the Fast Lane, which was a mine train model built by Vekoma, which is weird because most mine trains are built by Aerodynamics, but Aerodynamics was out of business by this point. So Vekoma built this mine train and featured onboard sound that played, you guessed it, Life in the Fast Lane by the Eagles.
No.
Surprising.
That's a good song.
Yeah, it's a good song. So, it's pretty much a family coaster, but it did feature onboard sound. Now, the park's headline attraction was this B&M looper called Led Zeppelin The Ride.
That looks like fun.
So, it was a 150-foot, 65-mile-per-hour steel looping coaster. The coaster was meticulously designed with input from the band, actually, which is kind of interesting.
That's cool.
So they required designers to play. So they selected "Whole Lotta Love" by Led Zeppelin to be the song that would play, but the band required that they hear the whole song during the experience of the attraction, which the song is about 5 minutes long. So they're like, "How are we gonna do that?" Because 5-minute coasters, that's not a thing. That's a really long time to be on a roller coaster. So what they came up with was the song would start during the pre-show, just like as you were in line and as you got onto the actual trains, and then it would continue to play throughout the attraction so that when you came into the final brake run, the song would end.
Nice.
So it was smart design. Yeah. So once on board, the song picked right up, leading to where Robert Plant screamed, synchronized to the first drop, which is pretty cool.
That's cool.
In order to further enhance the onboard audio experience, they filled the track and supports with sand to reduce sounds coming from the train along the track, which is actually fairly common. So, I don't know. So, here's a good example. So, when we went to Hershey Park, Great Bear was really loud. I don't know if you remember that, but just the way it roars throughout.
Yeah, it does roar throughout the whole park.
But it's built by the same company that does Wildfire, which isn't nearly as loud.
Well, because it's all in the woods.
Well, it's actually because when B&M constructs roller coasters for companies, they give them 2 options. One, they can fill the rails and the coaster with sand, or they can leave it hollow. It doesn't impact the structural integrity, but the sand muffles the sound. So if they want the coaster to have a really loud roar, they'll keep it hollow, and that's what they did for Great Bear. They also did that for Kumba at Busch Gardens, Tampa. So, a couple parks have done that. Most parks go the route of the sand just because they don't want to get noise complaints.
Right.
Or, I don't know, maybe they just don't want to deal with it. I don't know. Most parks go the road of the sand. So they did that in this instance to keep the coaster from being so loud that you couldn't hear the music. So, and then they put speakers, not only speakers behind your head, but they also put them on the front of the coaster car in front of you. Which I'm pretty sure what
Rip Ride Rockit does too.
I can't remember. I know for sure behind you.
They're behind your head, but I can't remember if there's one in the front.
So this was the headline attraction. Then also, look at this. This is the station for the ride.
That's sweet.
Big air zeppelin. That is so cool. I wish I could have been able to ride this because it looks awesome. Right there on the lake with the lightings.
It's beautiful.
Plus, I love that style of music, so I would have loved the heck out of this ride.
You would have loved this ride.
So
that's a bummer.
It is a bummer it's not there. So we'll talk about what happens. So, and then I have to show you this ride because this coaster also featured onboard sound, not a headliner, but just look at this thing.
What is that?
So this is called Maximum RPM.
It looks like a circus ride.
And it's called a coaster. It's a roller coaster, but it has what they called a Ferris wheel chain lift. So you would board the train. So this is the station here, and you would come out into this little section of coaster track, and it would lock your car in place. And then this rotates around like a Ferris wheel. So you'd rotate up here and stop, and then when you came all the way up to the top here, it would unlock your car, and then you would go down the first drop.
That is so strange.
Isn't that so bizarre?
Do they have anything like that in the world now?
No, this is the only one that's ever been built.
That's freaking weird.
It's built by the same... So if you look at those cars, does that remind you of anything?
They kind of look like the backlot stunt coaster cars.
That's exactly right, because it's built by the same company. So it's the same cars that backlot stunt coaster has, except it's not a full train. It's only one car at a time. But yeah,
it kind of looks like a Wild Mouse.
Yeah, so it's built by Premier Rides, which is the same company that did Backlot Stunt Coaster. So super bizarre. So not a headline thrill attraction, is a family coaster mostly. But I just had to show you that because that is very strange.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
That is a very weird one.
That's like top 10 of the weirdest design.
Yeah, like if you pull up YouTube videos of like 10 unique roller coasters, this one shows up quite a bit.
I don't blame it.
Very strange. Yeah, if you want to see pictures of this, go search. It had two names while I was at the park. You can either search Maximum RPM at Hard Rock Park, or Roundabout was the other name that it had. So yeah, go look at those pictures because this thing is bizarre.
Pictures too.
Yeah, I'll probably be able to put at least the picture of the lift hill on Instagram and Twitter so that you guys can see it. But yeah, this is very bizarre. All right, so Hard Rock Park is open. Let's jump over to Universal Studios Japan because they are also doing something with onboard sound. So in April of 2006, they announced a new coaster that would be opening the following year. It would be a $50 million investment, that's a lot of money for a roller coaster. That's a lot of money. It would be a new hypercoaster built by B&M. The attraction would open the next year as Hollywood Dream the Ride. And so I think I have some pictures here. So although the attraction is only 144 feet tall, so not as tall as B&M's other hypercoasters like Diamondback and Candemonium.
Right.
The ride puts a larger emphasis on sounds and sights. So the attraction features onboard sound, and this was the first coaster ever to feature the ability to pick which song would play. So you can see you could pick from 5 songs, and the songs rotate. Huh. So, it was built in 2007, so it doesn't just have songs from 2007. They've updated. So, like, even if you look at this one, there's, I think, Shake It Off by Taylor Swift, Happy by Pharrell Williams, and Bad by Michael Jackson, and then a couple Chinese songs, or Japanese songs. Yeah, Japanese songs, because Universal Studios Japan. So, anyway, so that was the first coaster to feature like the ability to pick a song, and you can kind of see if you look in the picture here, you can see the speakers behind people's heads. So same idea as the other coasters. What's interesting about this one is it also features a really awesome lighting package, and so I had to put this video in here. Cool. Look at that.
That's beautiful. It looks like a shooting star.
That's exactly what it's designed to look like. So the first car is completely illuminated, and then less and less lights are illuminated as you go further back the train.
Stunning idea.
So it looks incredible.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So I love that. I love the design, and it's just like, if nothing, and maybe it's not as exciting or thrilling as the other.
That would be a really cool concept to like bring to Magic Kingdom. Have like a Tinkerbell themed ride.
Yeah,
that'd be really cool.
It's very cool. So
Disney, you can pay me to take my idea.
So this is where it's interesting because like people are always like, oh, Disney has the best ideas, which I will say I like Disney more than Universal. But Universal does some pretty impressive stuff too, because this looks great.
It's a smart,
So,
really impressive.
So this ride's still there, very popular, one of their headline attractions at the park. Now, back in the U.S., Universal Studios Florida had been struggling throughout the early 2000s. So Disney had been pretty much embarrassing them with the additions that they had been putting in versus Universal Studios was putting in hardly anything. So starting in like the 2006-2007 timeframe, there was like this huge overhaul where Universal was like, if we don't do something, we are just going to get run out of town by Disney. So on May 31st, 2007, Universal Studios announced the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, which was a massive expansion to both parks and would include attractions, shops, and experiences, all revolving around popular Harry Potter books and movies. So,
which let me put this out there and say, well done, Universal, on how well themed this is. That's really the only reason we went to Universal was
it's true,
Wizarding World of Harry Potter.
Because we've always been like huge Disney fans, but that trip we were going for my sister's graduation, and she's a huge Harry Potter fan. And so she wanted to do Disney part of the trip, but she also wanted to go to Universal to check out the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. So, which is exactly what they wanted, right? They wanted to bring in people.
Absolutely.
And I think
it has quite a bit.
Absolutely. I think
it's really a crowd, like crowd pleaser, and I think it draws in quite a large crowd now more than ever. So.
It's interesting because I don't know if Universal Studios would have gone out of business if they didn't put Harry Potter, but for sure this saved their reputation and put them back on the map.
It's true.
And I would say, like, before this, Disney was completely demolishing them, and now this is kind of their, what they had in their back pocket to compete with Disney again.
Yeah, because I mean, like, the theming everywhere else in Universal is like, it's okay.
It's decent. They've got a Marvel area that looks pretty good.
Yeah, but it's not like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah. The Spider-Man ride is pretty well done, but other than that, it's kind of like B+ theming.
Like, as soon as you step into the Wizarding World,
you're like,
you're in a completely different, world.
Kind of how Star Wars is.
Exactly.
Which Star Wars was Disney's response to this.
Exactly.
So it's interesting how both parks are kind of pushing each other to the limits, which I think is a good thing.
It is a good thing.
Unfortunately, it also pushes the prices up, but
yeah.
So
we're not going to talk about that because I can get pretty controversial with that. So
I don't know if you know this, but did you know that Disney actually was going to do this? Like, when the idea of J.K. Rowling putting Harry Potter in a theme park, Disney was the first one to bid on this.
No. Oh, I would have been so happy.
But... What I've heard is that Disney wanted too much creative control over it. And J.K. Rowling is notorious for wanting to keep it, like, she wants to keep grips. Yeah, she wants to keep a grip on her books and her movie. Like, the movies were the same way. Like, she's like, it has to be this way or it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And Universal was like, okay. So, like, one of the things, the big thing I've heard is Disney wanted to make the shops, like, huge. And I don't know if you remember this, but when we went to Universal, those shops they're tiny and cramped. Mm-hmm. That's how J.K. Rowling wanted it, because that's how it's supposed to be.
It is supposed to. And it's very well themed.
And so Disney wanted to, like, they're like, we make the shop triple the size, you'll have triple the sales. Right. And she's like, I don't care. And so Universal, when they came in, they were like, okay, we'll do it. And so, I don't know, it's an interesting story that, Universal was like willing to just do whatever she wanted so that they could get this. Right. And clearly that was the decision. That was the right call.
Decision,
So, okay. Everyone's probably like, why are we talking about Harry Potter? I thought we were talking about Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit. Well, Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit ended up being built because of this. No, the reason is this was announced in 2007, but it wasn't going to open until 2010, and then Phase 2 in 2014. So while this was a huge announcement, it was going to take a while. And typically...
Which, I mean, you can see why.
Yes, clearly. But that can become a problem for parks when they put in a huge addition, people are kind of like, well, maybe we should wait to go until such and such opens. Like you and I were just talking about. I literally said to you, well, they're working on Universal Epic Universe right now. Maybe we should wait till that opens to go back to Universal.
Right.
That is pretty common. And so Universal kind of wanted to alleviate that by adding some new attractions in the meantime. So in 2007, they added 2 new dark rides, Disaster, and they added the Simpsons ride. And then on March 19th, 2008, Universal Studios announced Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit, which would be a 167-foot steel coaster built by Maurer, featuring not only onboard sound, but the ability to pick what song would play on the ride. So park officials said it was heavily influenced by Hollywood Dream, the ride, which was at their park in Japan, so makes sense. But they didn't want it to just be a clone of that ride. They wanted to kind of do their own thing. So the goal was to create the most thrilling, non-inverting steel coaster in the world, according to the creative director. Coaster would be extremely expensive and would be the first major outdoor coaster in that park. So they have Revenge of the Mummy in that park too, but that's completely indoors. And then all the other outdoor coasters were at the other park. This was in the clipping I saw. It said Universal Studios is about to build a new signature ride, a high-tech roller coaster full of lights, music, loops, twists, and turns. Park also made a big deal in marketing guests' ability to create a music video of their experience on the ride, which I guess was kind of their thing, to be like, this is what's different between Hollywood Dream and this one. Yes, you can pick songs. Yes, there's going to be a bigger selection of songs on this ride, but also this one, you can make your own music video. So they have like cameras on the train in front of you that record you while you're on the ride. So,
man, I kind of wish I would have watched the recording. I'll watch me black out.
Well, when you hear how much it costs, you might change your mind.
Oh, okay.
We'll get to that in a second. Park officials said ride was influenced by the rise in popularity of YouTube, which had doubled in size the 2 years previous to this announcement. So, now, the park did receive some criticism about the ride's theme, as Universal Studios has always been like movie-themed rides. Mm-hmm. And this has nothing to do with a movie. And so people even said they just slapped Hollywood onto the name of the ride to make it seem like it was a movie theme, but it has nothing to do with movies, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of Universal purists were really kind of upset about the theme of the ride. So, but anyway, they tried to rationalize it, and I still don't think it really fits with the Universal Studios theme, but it is what it is. Construction of the ride began shortly thereafter. Now, back at Hard Rock Park in Myrtle Beach, the opening weeks were extremely successful, but the country got hit by the recession in September of 2008, which was not good for a brand new amusement park that's trying to pay off loans and stuff like that. So, park cited macroeconomic conditions that significantly depressed overall demand in the travel and leisure industry, which was true. Park had borrowed a lot of money, and because of the recession, couldn't convince new investors to come in. So, not only that, but they had some investors drop out because of the recession. So, all that being said, the park filed for bankruptcy by the end of the year.
That's
so
sad.
They couldn't even last a whole year. So, yeah.
Just
well,
kidding. Just kidding. I
So-
know. It's like, it happens all the time. So.
it was unfortunate. So, Hard Rock Park went up for sale, and in February of 2009, Hard Rock Park was sold for $25 million to FPI-MB Entertainment. Because the sale did not include any licensing, the park and all the rides had to be stripped of any mention to Hard Rock or bands that had signed licensing deals with the park previously. So the park was renamed Freestyle Music Park. Which I gotta say, I hate that name. That's a horrible name. The sign is also horrible. Like when I look at Hard Rock Park, I see like a popular brand that's like, well established in our country.
Yeah.
That looks like, okay, I could go. This looks like a local park that's like running on, nickels and dimes. That's an exaggeration, but it looks cheap.
Yeah, it does.
And cheap is not what you need for an amusement park,
Right.
especially of this size. This was meant to be not a destination park, but it was meant to be there's not really any parks in that area, in the Myrtle Beach area. The closest thing is Carowinds, which is like 3 hours away. So, this could be a decent park if they, I think if Hard Rock Park was built in 2016, I think it's still there today. I think the recession is what killed this park, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's sad.
So anyway.
Because I was going to say, if it was still open, that'd be really easy for us to go to on our beach trip in July.
Yeah. So when I was doing the research for this episode, I knew about Hard Rock Park, but I didn't know where it was. Mm-hmm. When I saw Myrtle Beach, I was like, oh, that's a bummer. We could have easily gone. So Eagle's Life in the Fast Lane became Iron Horse. Led Zeppelin The Ride became Time Machine, and Maximum RPM became Roundabout, which I had mentioned earlier. So jumping back to Universal now, in April 2009, Universal had run into significant issues with Rip Ride Rockit and announced the ride would not be opening as scheduled. It was delayed until the summer, and then again in the summer it was delayed until August. So from what I've heard and what rumors are, it had issues with the vertical lift. So when you have a vertical lift, when you're going straight up, they have to have safety measures in case of a rollback, because you don't want that thing coming straight back down and slamming into the station. It's a little easier to put anti-rollback systems on, just an inclined hill. But vertical hills, you're dealing with more gravity than typical. And so those anti-rollbacks have to be really safe. So I guess Maurer designed a new one for the ride, and they put it in and tested it, and it wasn't working. So they had to rip out the whole lift hill and put it back in again.
Oh my gosh.
So that'll cause some significant delays for sure. So while all that is happening, Freestyle Music Park opened to the public the following year. Unfortunately, several lawsuits followed throughout the year as FPI was defaulting on payments to investors. They were desperately looking for additional investors, but they couldn't find any. I guess some payments they just completely ignored. Some lawsuits they ignored. Anyway, not good.
Yikes.
Bad stuff.
Yeah.
Back at Universal, Rip Ride Rockit finally opened to the public on August 19th, 2009, and continues to operate to this day. The ride experience is as follows. The station for the roller coaster is a unique design in which trains enter and slow down but do not stop. There's a moving sidewalk on both sides that moves at the same speed as the train, allowing riders to board. Riders have approximately 30 seconds to take their seat, lower the lap bar, and make their song choice. After the restraints are checked, the train begins to climb the vertical chain lift, and the song selected by the rider begins to play. The train crests the lift hill and drops 167 feet at a top speed of 65 miles an hour. The train then enters the world's first non-inverting loop, standing at 136 feet tall. As the train exits the loop, they climb up a hill to the right into the first brake run, then drop off the brake run and dive through a hole in a wall. This is followed by an upward helix to the left that's immediately followed by a quick element nicknamed the jump cut, also known as a non-inverting corkscrew. After a large dip, the trains enter the second brake run, followed by a small drop.
That's where I blacked out.
that second brake run. Then they take a right turn over the first drop and then a left turn back under the first drop. This is followed by a bank turn to the right up into the third brake run. After a small drop, the trains follow a winding S-curve section before hitting an inclined loop to the left and then into the fourth brake run. After a final small drop and a tiny pop of airtime, the train jumps up into the final brakes.
That's too many brakes.
Now, have I explained to you why the ride has so many brakes? I know you don't care, but have I explained to you why the ride has so many brake runs?
No.
So, the moving station, small trains, and the several brake runs are designed specifically to increase the ride's capacity.
Okay.
So, unless there's an issue, a train will leave the station every 23 seconds, which brings the ride's capacity to about 1,850 riders per hour. So, by comparison, Rock and Roller Coaster is about 1,400 per hour, and bring it closer to home, Powder Keg is about 1,000 per hour. when it's running 2 trains. So when it's running 1 train, it's only 500 per hour. So, yeah. So it's designed to, they can run, I think 7 trains at a time is what I saw, because of how many brake runs there are and the moving stations.
I will say it's impressive, like the capacity that they can get on this ride. But seriously, like 4 brake runs. My head hurts just thinking about it. So that's a lot. That's too much.
So
let's just go back to 1 brake run. That's good.
And it would be interesting to see what if they made the trains twice as long and got rid of 2 of the brake runs. What kind of capacity would we be looking at?
Or, I mean, so my beef with the brake run is how fast it braked. Like, it was so quick that, like, my head slammed against the back. And I remember it kept doing that, like, slamming. And so, like, that was really hard for, like, I guess my body and my brain, apparently, because I blacked out. And so... I feel like if they maybe, like, slowed down, like, have a, Flight of Fear in, like, those kind of brake runs don't bother me as much, because it's not an actual, like, slamming on the brake kind of motion.
Yeah, brake runs, they serve 2 purposes. So the first purpose they can serve, if they're trim brakes, is for example, if there's an element in the ride that designers want the coaster to go through, but the train is traveling too fast, they can put in trim brakes to slow the train down before it enters that element. So you can see that a little bit on... So Diamondback, I don't know if you noticed, but actually had some trim brakes going up one of the hills. It's fairly common. And like on Flight of Fear, that the brake run there is used as some trim brakes before you head into the second portion of the ride. But brake runs can also be used just as a last safety caution measure. So, for example, when I went on Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm, they have a mid-course brake run, but it doesn't actually stop you unless there's a problem. So you can see it, you see exactly where it's at, but you just go sailing right through it, and then you go into the second portion of the ride. It's there in case a train gets stuck in front of you, then it can stop you when you get there so you don't go hurtling and crashing into that train in front of you. So I wish that's what they were doing here, where the brake runs are there in case of an emergency, but if there's no problem, then it just sends you right through without slowing you down.
Right.
So I don't know if maybe it would exert too many G's on people if they didn't slow it down. So I don't know if they're using it as a safety caution or a safety precaution, but also as trim brakes. I don't know. Yeah. It pretty much seems like it always slows you down at least a little bit every time you go through the brake run.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So that's why it has so many brake runs. So now you know. Now you know why you hated it, at least. Yeah. The trains are also...
I don't know why you're laughing. It was a terrible experience.
I know. It was horrible.
It was awful. Don't make fun of my pain.
I'm not making fun of your pain. The trains are also equipped with 36 color-changing LED lights, which we didn't actually get to see this because we didn't stay. Yeah. We didn't stay at the park till dark. Or if we did, I think we may have been at a different part of the park, but...
I think we were at
we may have been over in Wizarding World that night or something, so...
Yeah, and I remember us leaving pretty early to go get dinner in the Disney parks.
So. But I do love the lights. They look really good. Not as good as the Hollywood Dream Ride, but I do really like the LEDs. One thing that's interesting, so before I ever went to Universal, I had a friend that I went with to Disney when I was 10, 11, something like that. And one night we went to the Blue Man Group, which is Universal Studios has like their own version of Disney Springs, or but I don't remember what it's called. Anyway, they have a bunch of shops, they have some shows, and Blue Man Group has a dedicated building over there, and it's right next to this roller coaster. So because the park is like right next door, they have separate entrances, but if you're over by Blue Man Group, this coaster, this part right here, actually, this non-inverting loop, or not the non-inverting loop, this here, we'll let the video play again, but the inclined loop right at the end of the ride, this part right here, Blue Man Group building is like right here. So I remember when we went, we got out of the show and it was dark. And I remember we got out and you could see the coaster flying by. And at that point I was still terrified of coasters. But I remember looking at it and I was like, whoa, that ride looks really cool. So anyway, that was my first experience with Rip Ride Rockit. Was just like, it looks awesome with the lights and everything. So, and people have gotten some pretty awesome pictures with those lights.
Yeah, I'm sure they
with
have.
Just taking long exposure images. So these are pretty cool pictures that people take of the ride. So I do like the lighting package. It looks good. Now, here's something really odd that the park did that people joke about. As part of the ride's marketing campaign, the park created a fake Eastern European rock star named Sid Vinyl. This is Sid Vinyl.
Okay.
So Sid was featured in commercials and interviews leading up to the ride's opening. He even had his own Twitter account.
Oh dear.
And so he posted stuff.
What are you famous for? I'm a fake rock star for the roller coaster.
Yeah.
Poor guy. That's a terrible way to get famous.
Yeah. This is a profile picture on Twitter. It's so interesting idea for a marketing campaign. Yeah. And after the ride's opening, he was never heard from again. So they never used him again. What? The Twitter account is completely hasn't been posted on. Very odd. Funny. So, like I mentioned, you can purchase a package at the end of the ride that includes a DVD of your music video, including some pictures and stuff, for just a low price of $49.95.
Holy moly!
That is crazy. You think, when you pay $5-10 for an on-ride photo, $50 for an on-ride video on Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit.
Rather sneak my phone on, man, for that purpose.
Don't sneak your phone on the ride.
I'm kidding.
Don't encourage that behavior.
Yeah, don't do that. Please don't do that. Because if it falls out of your pocket and hits someone on the face, the park is gonna have to pay for that damage.
It reminds me, I saw this post that someone made on Twitter yesterday of someone was watching people go on Fury 325, which is a Giga coaster at Carowinds, and they were just watching the ride, and all of a sudden they hear this boom, and they looked down and they saw someone's phone had fallen off the ride and slammed in one of the coaster supports at 90 miles an hour and just shattered. So serves them right. Don't take your phone on the ride.
Could you imagine the whole find my iPhone thing and they're like, where'd my phone go? Yeah. You see those little tiny pieces down there?
That's your phone.
That's your phone.
That's what's left of your phone. Rest in pieces. Oh, Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit has been met with mixed reviews, as I said. Some say it has a rough ride that makes it uncomfortable. The park actually... Oh, here. Let's see. Here's some tweets from some enthusiasts. So you can see here this one. We're smiling because we didn't go on Rip Ride Rockit. This one. I try to like Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit, but I just don't. And then this one. Rip Ride Rockit is still better roller coaster to watch than to ride, in my opinion.
You see that green spot down there?
Yep, that's where you laid down and recovered.
Literally laid on the ground, trying to regain consciousness.
So here's some other ones. Someone posted this a survey to fill out where you put your favorite coaster you hate, coaster you think is overrated, etc. And you can see so many people. Coaster I hate, Rip Ride Rockit, Rip Ride Rockit. There's 3 people, 4 people, 5 people. But then you can see this person, coaster I love, Rip Ride Rockit. And then this person, Rip Ride Rockit is probably the best coaster I have been on. So really polarizing. Some people hate it and some people love it. It's just really... so there's the main issues that enthusiasts argue. 1, it's a little bit rough. 2, the brake runs ruin the pacing. So it feels like 5 mini coasters instead of one
I could see
actual
that.
coaster. The brake runs just break up the pacing and ruin the experience. And then what was the last one? Actually, those might be the just the two main ones. It's just the roughness and the pacing. So anyway, oh, and that I remember the last one. It's some people just have a problem with the theme still, which makes sense. So I guess during the first few months it was open, it also had issues with valleying, which I don't know if you're familiar with that term. But that's basically when a train doesn't have enough speed to get over a hill, and it just goes back and it kind of gets stuck in one of the valleys of the roller coaster. So then the ride has to shut down, and they have to get the people off the ride. And anyway, big ordeal. So I guess I had issues with that early on. I haven't heard about that recently, though, so I think they must have figured out whatever was causing the issues. So over the years, the ride has developed a negative reputation among enthusiasts, but remains pretty popular among the GP. Now, there's rumors that B&M, which is the one that did Led Zeppelin the Ride at the one park and did Hollywood Dream at the other park, also did like Orion and Diamondback. So coasters that are really popular. There's rumors that B&M was supposed to do Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit, but they were busy because they were working on Led Zeppelin the Ride over at Hard Rock Park, which was constructed the same year they announced Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit. So they brought in Maurer, which Maurer really hasn't done a whole lot of work in the U.S. They're fairly small as far as coaster manufacturers are considered. So I don't know. It's interesting to think if B&M had built Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit, how much better could it have been?
It's true.
So I don't know that the ride would be
break runs.
Yeah, well, I don't know that the ride would be the same because B&M hasn't really done the non-inverting loop thing. I don't think would be on there. But even if it was just a small hyper coaster at Universal with the onboard sound, basically the same idea as Hollywood Dream, I think people would enjoy it much more. So
yeah,
I don't know. It's interesting. Now, something a lot of people don't know is, so when you ride Rip Ride Rockit, it has a playlist for you to pick from, right? They have, I think, 5 songs each in 5 genres. So there's like hip hop, classic rock, country, pop, and I can't remember the last one. But there's actually there's a secret playlist that people don't know about.
I actually knew this.
Have you heard about this?
I've heard about this.
So, for those of you who don't know, there is a secret playlist. So, when you get on the ride, the first thing you do is you're
revealing their secret?
I am going to reveal the secret so that people can go experience it if they want to. So, when you get on the ride, and they lower the lap bar, you'll have like 5 different genres to pick from. At the top, there's a Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit logo. If you push and hold that logo for about 10 seconds, a keypad will come up with like a 0 to 9 keypad so that you can type in a 3-number code. And so you have to know the code of the song you want to play before you go on the ride, because you'll type in the code, hit enter, and then it will play that song from the secret playlist. So here are just some of the notable ones that it's a lot of classic rock is on there, but there are a couple other things here and there. So they have like Temples of Sea Rings by Rush, Freebird, Immigrant Song, what else? Wheel in the Sky by Journey.
The Vertigo song for this song.
Yeah, you get Vertigo on that one. There's some weird ones though, like Jazz Instrumental. I don't know how I feel about listening to jazz on that ride. And then my favorite one is the Rainbow Connection by Kermit the Frog. Which is a Disney property, so that doesn't make any sense to me. But
that's funny.
If you really want to listen to Rainbow Connection by Kermit the Frog while you're riding Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit, you can do so. The code, I'll even give you the code for that one. It's 902.
Do it.
So I'll let you look up the rest of these codes.
Do it and then comment what
let us know how a Rainbow Connection was
to you while you were riding a roller coaster.
So that's pretty funny.
That's hilarious.
So this isn't everything. There's a whole. These are just the most notable ones I noticed. There's some Eminem on there, Fleetwood Mac, Metallica. There's some interesting stuff on there. So go check it out. You can Google Rip Ride Rockit secret playlist, and you can find everything on there. So After the 2009 season, Freestyle Music Park was foreclosed after defaulting on several payments. Several attempts were made to reopen the park, but nothing ever happened. So the coasters were standing but not operating for about 5 years until they were finally sold in 2015. Time Machine, or Led Zeppelin the Ride, the big one, was sold to Dragon Park in China, where it currently operates as Dragon's Run. So it's still out there, still running, but not anywhere close to us.
Darn.
And then Iron House and Roundabout were sold to Sun World in China. Iron Horse operates to this day. Roundabout was built but never operated at the park, likely because it was such a unique model. It had some operating issues. It seems like it was probably a nightmare to keep up the maintenance on something that complicated and unique.
Right.
So I imagine they tried building it and it wasn't worth the money, so they just tore it down. Though several U.S. coasters with onboard sound have opened since Rip Ride Rockit, none have really focused on the music theme like Rip Ride Rockit does, and none have featured the ability to pick your own song. So in that way, it kind of remains the most popular music-themed roller coaster, which is kind of why I decided to talk about the history of onboard music in roller coasters, because it kind of represents the pinnacle of that idea. Now, there have been some coasters that recently opened that do feature music, most notably Cosmic Rewind, which just opened a few weeks ago. So while you don't get to pick your own song on that ride, it is the Guardians of the Galaxy theme is very, very heavily rooted in music, and 80s music in particular. Mm-hmm. So I don't know every song that's on the ride. I've purposely not been looking because I don't want to spoil things before we go in December. Yeah, but I do know that there are several 80s songs that can play, so cool. And they're not train specific. So like Rock and Roller Coaster, you can tell what song you're getting based on what train pulls up. Like if you can find the train number, you can say, oh, it's going to play this song and this song. But Guardians of the Galaxy, it doesn't do that. It's just totally random. So like as the train is leaving, it just randomly picks a song, and that's the song that'll play during your ride. So it doesn't matter which train it is. And then, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but the Rock and Roller Coaster at Disneyland Paris is actually being converted right now into Avengers Assemble Flight Force. Huh. So it's going to be Rock and Roller Coaster. It's going to have a launch, but I mean, look at these awesome Iron Man style trains. Coaster. Really cool. Trains. So, and I don't know what kind of sound they're going to have on board, but they still have the speakers from when they were Rock and Roller Coaster trains. So I imagine it's going to have some kind of onboard sound. Yeah. So that would be awesome to check out, but I have no idea how we would ever, this is going to be a long time before we get to go to Paris and try that one out. So, but maybe one day. So it is interesting to see how, Disney started this whole onboard music trend, and then Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit and Hollywood Dream are adding on to that. And then Disney hasn't added like the ability to choose your music, but I imagine the speakers are getting better and better. Sound quality is getting better. I'm excited to try Cosmic Rewind to see like how the sound is, like how that, the sound impacts the experience of that ride. Especially because I love the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. So I'm really excited to try that.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
While Rip Ride Rockit has a divisive reputation, there's no doubt that the coaster features some impressive technology and has certainly been a successful investment for the park. So, and that is the history of Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit at Universal Studios. I got to ask one more question. I got to ask you. What do you think of the name of the coaster?
I don't get it.
It is way too long.
It
is way too long. So when I read the newspaper. So here I'll explain it to you.
Rocket, Rip, and Ride and Rocket. They just don't go together.
So I'll explain what it is because they interviewed someone about the name, and so Hollywood is meant to. I don't know why they put Hollywood in there. Probably to make it seem like it's part of the movie theme, even though it's not. Rip is meant to be like you're ripping the music video from the train onto the DVD that you're going to buy.
Okay.
Or I guess ripping music, like that's a term that like when you rip a CD, even though you don't really do that anymore.
Yeah.
Back in 2008, 2009, that was more of a thing. And then ride, I don't know, that makes sense. You're riding the roller coaster. And then rocket is just a play on words of being a rocket, but it's ROCKIT, like you're rocking out. So, I don't know. I understand the name. It's still way too long. Everyone in every newspaper article I read, they just called it Rocket. So
that's funny.
Yeah, it's because it's way too long. You're not gonna type that out in every, like, you know, you're trying to condense your
copy paste.
Yeah,
copy.
It's just it's a nightmare. So even when I was typing out my script here, I just put RRR.
RRR.
That's what I put every time I wanted to mention the name of the coaster.
cubed.
So R cubed. That's it. But R3. That should have been the name.
No, because it's a Disney property.
R3.
Oh, there is an R3D. I don't know. I thought there was a droid named R3.
What's R3? Let's find out. R3. Can they just change the name to R3?
It's
I don't know
R-cubed.
I don't know that that's a better name.
It's
R3
funny.
is a motorcycle, apparently.
What?
Yeah, it's a brand of a Yamaha motorcycle.
It's gotta be a droid in Star Wars. Sounds like a droid in Star Wars. R2D2's cousin.
R3D3?
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Airtime Traveler. Hope you enjoyed it. I do know what I'm going to be talking about next time, actually. So we're going to be talking about, I won't spoil the coaster, but we're going to talk about something at Knott's Berry Farm.
Okay.
So Haley wasn't able to go to Knott's Berry Farm with me, but
it was a business trip.
It was.
/ pleasure.
Well, I tagged on the trip to a business trip that I had. So I am going to try to tie it into another ride that you have been on, though, so that you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. And I'll be very detailed so that you can get the full experience that I had while I was there. So
I won't get the full experience.
Well, I'll do my best. So, but yeah, so we'll talk about Knott's Berry Farm next time, and be sure to follow us here on Spotify or wherever you may be listening to us, so that you can keep up to date on everything that we're talking about. And you know, like I said, we'll be posting that Kings Island trip report, and also other trips we'll be taking later in the year. We'll be doing trip reports on those, and we release a new episode every 2 weeks, so be sure to keep up to date on those. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Airtime Traveler, and keep up to date on the things we're talking about over there. You have anything else you want to say before the end of the episode?
No.
Any final words to Hollywood Rip Ride Rockit?
I mean, rip, rest in peace.
I wish Rip Ride Rockit would rip.
Yep.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
Well, thanks for tuning into this episode of Airtime Traveler, and we will see you in the next episode.